Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Tuesday. It's June 21st. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And I thought I'd start out showing you this daily chart. As expected, we bounced it. We bounced it. We bounced right off of that lower trend line channel there, or trend channel line, and we're headed higher. There was some concern that we could go lower, but the expectation here is that we should go at least back to the midline here or the EMA, which is here. And if we surpass those two, we should be headed back to this upper trend line. I mean, actually, your expectations are we'll go back to the upper trend line. So those are possible roadblocks along the way. Is the midline of the channel, which is this light blue line, and then the 21 EMA, which is the purple line here in the middle. So, but that's what we're looking at. Very bullish day. We closed a little off the high, but that's fairly bullish. You can see the holiday trading was mixed. A lot of these holiday trading days, the market will be open to noon. So don't waste your time trying to trade that. Every now and then you'll get some movement. I don't even know what yesterday looked like. We'll flip back and look at it, but don't waste your time with that stuff. I mean, the market closes at noon. Usually it's very low volume. None of your institutional traders are going to be trading because it's a bank holiday, and none of your large traders are going to be trading. You just got a bunch of little small fries in there beating each other up is usually what happens, and nobody does anything. So, but let's flip over to the other chart and we'll just look at yesterday. And you can see here, this is yesterday's trading right here. So there's a little bit of movement. The market opened at 8:30, and that's what we had from 8:30 to noon. Just as you can see, there's no volume there. So if you started trading at 7 o'clock, and you definitely don't want to trade before 7. So between 7 and noon, we had maybe 25 or 30 bars. Don't waste your time with that stuff. I don't see a single setup there, really. And you don't want to get stuck in a trade up here right into the close at noon and then get kicked out by your broker and take a loss. And so it's just not worth trading. So don't, even though the market's open, considered open from till noon, don't try to trade that stuff. There's no volume, and there's no, it's just better off to stay away from it. So I don't trade that stuff. I use it for a day off and get a longer weekend and take a rest and come back recharge, and that's what I recommend everybody do. So, but here's a look at today. You can see we had the khaki colored channel coming up, and we had a break here, and there's actually a couple legs up to a new high, and let's just see, they look like two measured legs. Didn't really measure them. Looks like basically two perfect measured legs up, and then we sold off after that, and that's why we closed off the high right here. But pretty basic no, I can't get that to come off of my, why is that not delete? Well, anyway, I'm having trouble here, so we'll leave it back on there. But you can see we had the channel up, break, couple legs up to a new high, and then we sold off. We're really going sideways into the close. It turns into a down channel there with a break and new low, and now it looks like we tried to reverse. Not much happening. There's no volume by that time of day. Let's zoom in, and we'll go through these trades, and we'll wrap the day up. Not a lot of trades here, but there's enough good trades that you should be able to do pretty well on a day like this. I will say that for a strong trend day, there's not as many trades here. There's some green ones, and you probably could argue for some other green ones here as well on a day like this, but I prefer sticking to the sure things, and for the most part, that's what I'm going to mark. And the ones that are green they meet our criteria, but they're probably a little aggressive for one reason or another. And you can see it got a little got a little slow after about 10 o'clock. There's a couple of trades in the afternoon here, not many. And my mind, I don't know where my mind is today, but that shouldn't be there. That should be there. And for some reason my delete button is not working here. So anyway, we won't worry about it. We'll just slide that one out of the way. All right, well let's go back here and talk about the trades. And even here we're trending up, and you got a possible trend line here, and prices come down, and we actually get an overshoot here and a little trap and head higher here. But that pretty much, this trend line's really already confirmed. So when it touches it here and then reconfirms it here, that far away from the EMA, I like going long right there. Just treating that as a double test of the trend line and confirmation of it. And then you actually get a third test right here. You already had pretty much of a given down here, but this just further confirms it. And this is a failed second entry short as well. Normally you wouldn't want to trade a failed second entry short, but right off the key entry point with a nice signal bar, that's hard to turn down. But notice your new low and you get a first entry and a second entry. And you could even trade that as a higher low, really. So a couple of different reasons to like that trade, and maybe even a triple test. So you can see that pretty much as a triple test too. So a lot of different reasons to like that one. Then we just kind of chop higher. I don't see anything I like here. Let's zoom this in a little bit closer. And we're just going sideways here. It's the first break of this cayenne colored channel, but you could look at that as a triple test as well. And it's also a first entry, second entry, so a failure. Obviously, you don't really count a failure or whatever within a range like that. I just like it as a triple test, and we're looking for prices to retest the highs here. And you got the bigger channel, so we're probably at least headed to the midline and probably going to try to head up here. And so if you get a chance to catch this little trap right here, notice how it breaks a little lower right there. And it's such a nice bar. And then, of course, we're running up and you get a first entry, second entry. Now, this doesn't really set up like a true failure, but I guarantee it traps some shorts trying to pick a high here. And you could look at it as a failure or a double test of the midline here, and that's the reason we couldn't get back here. So if you recognize what's going on here, maybe you take that trade. It's definitely more advanced. So I just marked it green. Of course, we run back up here. You get a first entry there. There's a second entry right there, but don't take that far away from the EMA on an inside bar like that, because you'll probably get trapped. That's what happened there. They trapped everybody, ran the shorts, and we come back. And notice we get we pull back, made a low there. We test it once, we test it twice. So you get a triple test right there. And so I like that entry, but then you actually get a second entry long here. That's a double top, so you can count that as a new high. And then we break higher right there. Even though we don't break lower, you get a matching high right there. So when it breaks higher, technically that's a second entry long. And look how many times we've tested that midline right there, and we're going higher. When you test something that many times and it holds, eventually you're going to go the other way. So you just need the right setup. And these two, either one of those are pretty good setups. You can see a lot of the smarter traders probably waited for a little more confirmation here. So this one's close to being green. There is a second entry here. I didn't count this one because you got a big overshoot. It's probably, even though it's not touching on my trend channel, it probably did touch the trend. Maybe it didn't because we did touch here. But the momentum's still strong here. And there is a second entry. I didn't mark it. It's one you could argue for to be green. It's a little bit congested looking sideways. We do run up and so we get an overshoot, which leads to a break. That's usually a first clue we're probably going to get a break. And then we run to a new high. And then we're just chopping sideways again until you make a new low here. You test it once. You test. There's a triple test right here. but the signal bar is not any good. But a few minutes later, you get another test of it with a nice signal bar, and there's really two legs right there, even though you're not looking for that in this sideways stuff. So I like going long right there again. We run up, you get a little breakout pullback long. There's a hidden second entry in there. I didn't mark this because we've been bouncing off these highs and we're overdue for a turn back down. So you got to watch your trades real closely from this point on. And notice we get two legs up that fail here. I wouldn't trade this on the engulfing bar, but if we break higher here, I'd probably trade it as a failure because notice that low and you get a first entry and a second entry. So when it breaks higher right there, that's a failure. Your signal bar makes the low, so your safety stop has to go below this bar, but this is your entry is one tick above that bar. Unless you did trade the engulfing bar, but I'd skip that. Then you get another failure right here. Notice technically what happens, you made this low and you broke higher and turned back down. So really you could look at this as another new low. It's close to being a double bottom, but it's not. But you try to go lower short once, twice. When it breaks higher there, you could look at that as another failure. And that's right off the EMA. And this thing just keeps chopping higher till finally we can't get back up there to the highs, and it does turn down. You can't be going short in here yet, though. Not on this side of the midline. But once we get on this side, I like this. I marked this one green. Technically, there's a double bottom here, so it's a first entry, second entry. You could also look at it as a little break out of congestion here. But it's right off that key entry point, right off the EMA, and you can look at it as a second entry short. So I liked it. And we should be headed back down to the trend line. In all actuality, we keep going here. It just breaks. Again, I don't think I'd be taking any shorts because this has been a strong trend. So we're going to probably retest the high. It's just a matter of timing. So I don't see anything here that would prompt me to take a short. I just wait. And then once we start going higher, you got to be real careful here because technically we don't have a convincing close outside in a new low. Yeah, we did close outside there. Is that convincing? No, not at all. I mean, you could probably argue that this thing's a little, it's up here a little more. And then really you don't have a, maybe you get an overshoot here. Even there, it's not very convincing. So you got to be real careful going long. And I would have waited till this trend line confirms here, and then you get a second entry long. But that signal bar is not good enough for a second entry. But notice you got a new low there. So there's a first entry, second entry failure as well. So if you see them both, you could go long right there. You actually get another second entry right here. I didn't mark this one because it's so close to that high, and it's just, I mean, this thing could play out here any second. So, I mean, all you might do is run up. There's probably enough room there, and that's an inside bar, and so that's the other reason I didn't like it. I mean, it's one you could argue to be green. Again, your signal bars here though, so your safety stop has to go here, but your entry on your second entry would be one tick above that bar. And notice the new high, and it breaks higher, and it makes a lower high here. Even though it doesn't make a lower low, that's still considered a second entry. It's a little more advanced, but it's there. And now you got your break and new high, and then you're kind of heading lower. I think it's too early to go short here, even though you could look at that as a failure. But a few minutes later, you get a second entry short, and it does confirm that trend line. I marked this one red, but you could, I mean, that's a little congested, and you know, it is off that key entry point though. But this is real close to being green. Depends on how you saw it, how you would, whether you could mark it red or green. But I tend to like it because it's probably going to trap some longs and it's going to run down. You can see it ran down really quickly a couple of bars before it starts. And then, of course, where does it bounce? Of course, you actually wouldn't have this trend line yet. So Let's fix this. I'm sorry, my phone is just going nuts in the background here. Um, you wouldn't have had that trend line yet, but there's no break of this yellow one anyway, and then we're just kind of chopping sideways. I don't see anything in there I like. Just stay out of that. There's no shorts, there's no longs, there's nothing there that I like. And of course we do run on up there. You get a close outside here, a couple of legs up to a new high, and it does turn down pretty much off the top of that trend channel right there. And then we're headed lower. And that takes you into the 230. There is a trade here. Notice the high. You can test it once. You come back and test it twice. Very nice bar, bearish bar, and that's also a second entry short. Good ways away from the EMA when you're looking for prices to go back to the other side. And so you might take that trade. It's a little late in the day to be gambling on a top, but I mean, everything is there because now you've got a break of the yellowish channel and those two measured legs up for the most part to a new high, and you can see that that's close enough to almost be two perfect measured legs. So, and then again, that takes us into 230. So that's how I saw it today. Back out here and look at it one more time. Evidently, while I'm recording, some of my controls don't work here because I'm having a hard time on my chart, and I've noticed that before. Some of my controls on my, when I've got in this recording, those buttons actually work something on the recording and don't actually do what they're supposed to do. So anyway, I can't get this thing to drag down. Usually you can hold your button and use your mouse and drag that down, but it's not working. So anyway, you see it there. Trend up, break, two legs up to a new high, and then we trended down. And there's actually, I didn't draw it here, but there's a trend down as well. We'll make this one a little different color to make it easier to see. And you can see the break and move to a new low, and then looks like we're trying to rally out of there. Of course, the market's closed now for another 10 minutes. It'll open back up here. It's 10 till 5 my time, so the market will open up here again in 10 minutes. And that's how I saw it today. Pretty quick and simple. I will point out this real quickly before we go. Notice where prices closed yesterday, and they closed even lower than that Friday. I'm not going to go down there and show you how far down, but we opened up right here today, and so there's a gap between where we open. Actually, that's not correct. That's not the close. That's the close from the previous day. I don't see a close line on here for yesterday. I don't know why it's not there. Anyway, we closed, I mean, somewhere right in here we closed yesterday. And this is where we open. So there's a gap there. You don't see it on this chart. So if that confuses you, just don't pay a whole lot of attention to it because it's more advanced. But there's a gap because if you, between the close and the 8:30 a.m. open, this yellow is the 8:30 a.m. open. And those are more the New York pit type hours based on the stock market and things like that. So it's still valid. You'll still see this a lot. A lot of times the prices will come back and fill that gap before they'll go higher. Didn't happen today because we had a strong momentum. So it wouldn't surprise me tomorrow or the next day if we don't come back and fill that gap. Sometimes when the market's really strong and rallying fast and hard, it's a while before they come back and fill those gaps. I think we had a few to the downside on this latest sell-off. So there's probably some overhead gaps that our prices are going to try to fill here shortly as well. So, but just be aware of those because a lot of times prices will come all the way back and fill those gaps. So prices would have to drop to way down here and probably Friday because this is just nothing. This is just noise over here. What we have between till noon on holidays is just noise. It doesn't even really count. So I would have looked for it to come back and all the way to here and test this if it did start back down during the same day, which you'll see that a lot. So that's the reason I'm bringing it up. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. It's going to be another short week this week. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.